Hello, in this video we're looking at issue 64 of Warhammer Imperium magazine, the new Necron Deathmark models that we get with this issue, and then in our battle report they'll be trying to pick off some Battle Sisters characters. Hello, I'm Will and this is Mike with the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And in this video we're bringing you issue 64 of Warhammer 40,000 Imperium magazine, which came with 5 Deathmark models for the Necron collection. You'll be able to see what those can do in our game if you want to skip straight ahead, using the chime code in the description or the chapter bars, but we'll have a look at the other issue contents before we get there. So first we have a battle record and description for the Deathmarks. These are Necron assassins, armed with deadly synaptic disintegrators. They wait in hyperspace pockets until their target has shown itself, whereupon they will translocate into position and immediately open fire. And they have specialist equipment to help them with that. And their battle record here, so you can give them a name and the commander of their legion, and usual things for Necrons. We learn about Watch Captain Artemis now, of the Death Watch, chapter we learned about recently. Originally from the Mortifactors Space Marine chapter, he'd already assailed himself as an alien hunter before being seconded to the Death Watch, where he rose to the rank of Watch Captain and now leads kill teams, and has many impressive feats to his name, including denying Eldari Farseer Eldrad Ulthran, attempting to reawaken Inayad, the god of the dead, early, as we learned about in a previous issue. And information now about Chaplain Cassius of the Ultramarines, the oldest living Ultramarine, who in his younger years also fought with the Death Watch, but now brings his wisdom to the Ultramarines chapter once again. And he also founded the Tyrannic War Veterans, an elite cadre of warriors in the Ultramarines who specialise in fighting the Tyranids. Speaking of the Tyranids, we have some information on the first Tyrannic War now. The Imperium's first encounter with the Tyranid Hive Fleet Behemoth, which came in from the Eastern Fringe, first encountered at the planet Tyran, hence the name, and then descended upon the Ultramarines' realm of Ultramar and their home planet of Macragge. And it was only thanks to the genius of Marneus Calgar and the sacrifice of the entire Ultramarines' first company defending their fortress, by which the Tyranids were halted, although those wise enough to see realised that this was only the start of the Tyranid invasions of the galaxy. Now we have the build guide for Deathmarks. It's actually the same kit as the Immortals that we had in a previous issue, but with some slightly different parts. So they have different back plates and heads and weaponry. So you can see there that gives them a different silhouette to the Immortals. And then painting them is the same scheme as for the Necrons, but with a slight colour variation, like it suggests painting their backplates in black, and then the usual colours for various other elements of them, but with their heads in white again to make them stand out. And that's where they are up to this point. So I'll hand you over to Mike, where we can learn their rules and some more for the Space Marines, and then get into our game.
So before we can see our new Deathmarks in action, we have some more rules for the Space Marines. These are deployment-related abilities. So we have combat squads first. At the start of deployment, before any units have been set up, if a unit has the maximum number of models that it can split into 2 units containing as equal a number of models as possible. We have Death from Above, which is your standard deploy off the battlefield, then arrive 9 inches away from any enemies during the reinforcement step. Some of the upcoming Phobos models have access to that. And then Concealed Positions, which is similar, but allows you to deploy a unit anywhere on the battlefield during deployment more than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. So it's similar, but it occurs during the deployment step. And here you can see examples of combat squads, so a unit of 10 infiltrators being split into 2 units of 5, and concealed positions there, allowing the infiltrators and the librarian to deploy further up the board than they would normally. And then some rules for the Necrons. 2 of these you've actually seen before. We have a sort of formal rules for dimensional translocation and living metal. We should be used to that by now. But we also have a new quirk here called the Royal Court, where if your army contains an overlord, then that model must be your warlord. If you don't have an overlord, then you can choose your warlord normally. Basically, the overlord has to be in charge. Yeah, and there you can see tutorials again, the Royal Court there. The Overlord has the Overlord keyword, obviously, so he has to be the Warlord. And then dimensional translocation there, showing how the Deathmarks are teleporting in 9 inches away from those assault intercessors. And here we have our datasheet for the Deathmarks. So they're fairly similar to Immortals. They have a similar stat line, except they have a ballistic skill of 2+ and only 1 melee attack. They are an elite's choice rather than a troop's choice. And they're also a core unit. And they're only 4 power for 5 as well. And they are armed with synaptic disintegrators, which have a 36-inch range, heavy 1, strength 5, AP-2, 1 damage. And they can ignore the lookout's rule and unmodified wound rolls of 6 to inflict a mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. And then they have reanimation protocols, command protocols, and dimensional translocation. And the next page just shows off the synaptic disintegrator being used against the Phobos librarian and even scoring a mortal wound. So now we can get into our backstory for today's game. The war on Kjalma's skull continues to rage. This is taking place in the Northern Hemisphere and amongst the Scaris foothills where the Imperium are advancing on Necron positions. The Imperial officers and leaders are leading from the front to ensure that they maintain the morale of their troops, and obviously the Necrons are going to try and capitalise on that by taking out these key targets of opportunity. And so we have today's mission, Rallying the Troops, which is going to be a 25 power game, and you can see the battle mat is the Kjalma's Skull one with the preset terrain, and there are 3 objective markers. The Imperium is Player A. Player A's deployment zone is down in the bottom left, with Player B in the opposite corner. And there's just one objective for the game. There's no victory points or secondary objectives. The Imperium has to complete the rally up action 3 times to win, otherwise the Necron player is victorious. And the rally up action can be performed by 1 unit with the character keyword, and it can start to perform the action at the end of the shooting phase, and the action is completed at the start of the next Imperium command phase. Although they can't start performing the action if there are any enemy units within range of the objective, and the unit doing the action has to stay in range as well. So have a look at the armies we've picked, and then come back after we finish deploying. So here's the Imperial army I've picked, or I should say the Adeptus Sororitas army I've picked, because I've just brought the entire Battle Sister collection we have. So we have the Canoness Silverguy Warlord, the Repentia Superior, the Sisters Repentia, the Archoflagellants, the 10 Battle Sisters, the 5 Seraphim, and the Penitent Engine. That's 23 power, and then I'm paying another 2 for the Word of the Emperor miraculous ability, because it'd be nice to finally show one of those off. And here we have the Necron army.
The last time we played on this board, because the sight lines are terrible, I thought a melee army would be good, so I've brought just that. We've got the Scorpec Lord as my 1 HQ choice, obviously he'll be the Warlord, 3 Scorpec Destroyers and their Plasma Sight. My mandatory troops choice is the Warriors with Gauss Reapers. I've got the 5 Deathmarks, who are obviously not a melee unit, but it'd be a shame not to use them, and a unit of 3 Scarab Swarms.
So, set up the board and deployed. It's the same preset layout we had in one of the earlier games. You can see Objective 1 in the bottom left building and Objective 3 in the open area in the bottom right. And then there's Objective 2. The diagram in the magazine is a little misleading because these rectangles are not 6 inches along the short edge, so Objective 2 is in that wall in that structure over there. And I finished my deployment down here. I have the Archoflagellants, the Canoness and the Repentia Superior, big unit of Battle Sisters with the Repentia behind and then the Penitent Engine at the top, and my Seraphim are in Skystrike. So my Sacred Right this game will be the Passion, so that's, if you roll a 6 to hit with a melee attack, it counts as an extra hit. And then we have the Necron deployment.
Yeah, a bit of a challenge to fit it all in. I didn't deploy anything in dimensional translocation. It's such a small board, it'd be difficult to bring them in. So at the front are the Necron Warriors, then there's the Destroyers behind them, sort of, and the Deathmarks at the back. And then on the far side is the Scorpec Lord, the Plasma Sight, and the Scarabs.
So we're only having 3 command points each because it's a smaller game, and we're rolling off to see who picks who goes first. And that was a tie, so we roll again. I won the roll-off, and I will choose to go first, so I head into Imperial turn 1. No command protocols for the Necrons because they don't have a noble, so I gain a command point and a miracle dice, or a 6. In my movement phase, some of the Battle Sisters are getting into the structure, as are the Archoflagellants, get some cover and make it hard for the Necrons to get onto the objective. That's basically going to be it. I'm going to let the Necrons come to me. I do think going first is key though, because I basically get a free turn to do the objective, I think. So in my shooting phase, the Canoness will start doing the action, and that'll be it. On to Necrons turn 1.
So in my movement phase, almost everything has advanced because there's nothing to see or to shoot at. The Destroyers did not, because they could theoretically pull off a long charge on the Archoflagellants. And the Destroyer Lord also did not advance because he will be able to shoot. I also actually spent a command point to reroll an advance roll for the Warriors. I rolled a 2 and rerolled it into a 2, so that went well. So in the shooting phase, the Destroyer Lord can shoot the Penitent Engine because it's the only thing it can see. Destroyer Lord has 2d3 shots. 3. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, they all hit. Wounding on 3s. Strength 6, that's 3 wounds.
So 3 5+ armour saves. Well, I made 2. And then a 5+ 2 ignore. Didn't ignore it, so it takes a wound down to 4.
There's no more shooting, but in the charge phase, as I said, the Destroyers will attempt a long charge. I won't use the Plasma Sight's ability on them, just in case. They need about an 11. No, a 9 is not going to be enough, and I won't reroll that.
Now, with that failed charge, we're on to Battle Round 2 and Imperial Turn 2. Then gain another Miracle Dice. A2, go up to 5 command points as well. And at the end of the command phase, I complete the action for the first time, so I'll use this D10 to keep track of that. So in my movement phase, the Archoflagellants and the Penitent Engine are moving up to hold up the Necron forces. Over here, the Battle Sisters are just sort of forming a wall around the objective, and the Repentia hanging out at the back. And then the Repentia Superior will be doing the action, because aura abilities are not active while a character is doing the action, so I want the Canoness's aura to be active. So she can apply it to the Seraphim, who have arrived at the end of the movement phase as well. I'm actually going to spend a command point to use Deadly Descent, and they're going to shoot at the destroyers. So I'm actually going to supercharge the Superior's plasma pistol. So I'll do her first because she does 2 damage. Oh, she hits. Alter wound on 3 wounds.
6 to save. Nope.
8 bolster pistol shots on 3s rolling 1s. 7 hits. Wounding on 5s. Only getting a single wound at no AP.
3+. Yes.
I'm also going to spend 2 command points to do Defenders of the Faith for the Battle Sisters. It's not very clear whether they're objective markers or action markers, or whether action markers are objective markers, but we're going to say they are. And now we're on to the shooting phase, where I'll do the Seraphim again at the same target. So I'm going to supercharge the plasma, so bolt pistols first because I've got a destroy on 1 wound. On 3s rolling 1s. 6 hits this time, wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds.
3 saves. That kill the wounded one.
And then the plasma hits, wounds on 3, does wound.
6. No, 2 damage. Does the dead one come back? No.
2 of the Battle Sisters, the Stormbolter and another regular one, can actually see the warriors through that window there, so they might as well have some shots. Just roll it all together because it doesn't matter with the extra damage. 6 shots on 3s, rolling 1s. Only 3 hits. It's through a small window, I suppose. Wounding on 4s, getting a single wound.
There's some in the building in cover, so 3+ against that, yes.
And finally, we've got the Penitent Engine, going to put its heavy flamers into those Necron warriors. 2d6 automatic hits for 11. Wounding on 3s. It's only 6 in the end.
Taking saves on the ones in the building, so 4s. One of them is dead. 4 left on the 4. Yes. No. And then 2 left on the 5s. 1. So 3 dead total.
Do any of them come back?
Rerolling 1s. No.
So 2 warriors in the building died, and 1 outside. In the charge phase, the Arco-Flagellants outcharge both the destroyers and the warriors.
And I will not overwatch because only 3 warriors can see them.
So the charge roll for the Arco-Flagellants is a 7. So that gets the Flagellants to there. The Penitent Engine will charge the warriors, who won't be able to overwatch now because they're engaged. It gets an 11, it's definitely in. So it gets in range like that. I'm going to do the Arco-Flagellants first in the fight phase, because the destroyers might interrupt, and I'm going to use a command point for Extremist Trigger Word, which means they get 3 attacks per Arco-Flail instead of 2. So there's 12 attacks from the normal one, on 4s rerolling everything. Good job we can reroll everything, because that was not a good roll. That's better. Wounding on 5s, 4 wounds.
4+. 3 wounds, so that kills 1, and the remaining one is down to 1 wound.
And then the Endurant has 9 attacks. I'll have to do these separately because the Endurant is strength 5. 4s rerolling everything. 7 hits, wounding on 4s. Oof, 5 wounds.
Need to pass all of these. No, it's dead.
Well, I'll consolidate the Flagellants into the warriors, but I do need to roll for them in case any of them die because of the Extremist Trigger Word. So there's 3 of them in the unit, and any ones kill a model. Oh, one of them does die. Then the Penitent Engine gets to go. 5 attacks on the warriors, hitting on 4s, rerolling everything. They all hit. Wounding on 2s, because strength 8. Only 3 wounds, or 3 dead warriors.
So 3 reanimations. Put 1 back. So 3 die, and then I brought 1 back nearer the Arco-Flagellants. But then they do get to hit back, and I will put all the attacks I can into the Arco-Flagellants, which is all but 1, which has to hit the Penitent Engine. So 4 attacks on the Flagellants on 3s, 3 hits wounding on 4s, nothing at all, and 1 attack on the Penitent Engine, missed.
We're on to Necron's turn 2.
Well, we're running out of time, so we're just going to try and have to ignore these things over here as much as possible, but the Destroyer Lord unfortunately can't fit through the gap between them, so he has to stay pretty much where he is. The Scarabs have advanced on the objective building, Warriors fell back through the gap in between, Deathmarks have moved over, which will make them worse at shooting, but we do need to make progress. And that brings us straight to the shooting phase, where the Deathmarks are going to start by shooting the Arco-Flagellants. 5 shots hitting on 3s, because they're heavy weapons and they moved. Oh, they all hit. Strength 5, so wounding on 3s, 6s do a mortal wound in addition. Oh, we've got 3 wounds with 2 mortal wounds.
That's 5 damage in total.
Yeah, they're AP minus 2.
So ignoring damage on 5s. Didn't ignore any, so they are gone.
And that leaves the Destroyer Lord free to shoot the Battle Sisters, actually, because you can see them through the window over there. They've still got 10 models, so 2d3 shots, minimum 3. Not 5. Wounding on 2s, rerolling 1s. They all hit. Wounding on 4s, rerolling 1s because of their Friends of the Faith. 3 wounds.
3+ saves, 3 dead Battle Sisters.
On to the charge phase. The Scarabs will charge the Battle Sisters.
Can't really see anything to overwatch, so...
Charge roll is a 4. It's probably enough. 4 inches is enough to get this Scarab Swarm in range of that Battle Sister, so that's just about a legal charge. And the Scorpion Lord will charge the Penitent Engine.
Yeah, the Penitent Engine will overwatch. 2d6 automatic hits for 4. Really on 4s. Nothing.
And his charge. 5. I'm actually going to re-roll that. It is enough to get in, but I want him to go all the way round, and I've got quite a lot of command points anyway. 5. Oh well. So unfortunately he can only go there, which is not as close as I need him to be to the objective, but... And we'll use the big sword, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, with 4 attacks. We're going to re-roll 1. So down to 2 command points. Nope. Winning on 3s, re-rolling 1s again. Right, well it's 6 damage with no save.
Got to re-roll some damage then. All 5s. Only ignored 2, so that's enough to kill it.
And we'll consolidate to there, but that's still not as close as I wanted to be, but never mind. The Scarabs will pile in a bit, crucially getting this one within 3 inches of that objective, so as long as it's still there.
Yeah, it won't stop me finishing the action, but it will stop me doing it again.
And then 12 attacks hitting on 4s, 6s wound automatically. We've got 7 hits and an automatic wound, wounding on 4s with the normal ones. 4 more, so 5 wounds total. 5
3 pluses. No, we only lost 1 this time. So we got the Superior and 5 regular Battle Sisters in range. 8 attacks, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and 6s are an additional hit. 4 hits and then 2 more, so 6 hits in total. Wounding on 4s, 4 wounds.
With a 6+ save. Made a 6, so base is down to 1 wound.
Lost 4 Battle Sisters, the leadership 9 with the Canoness, but I'll just use that 2 Miracle Dice to also pass the test. But then we're on to Imperial turn 3. Gaining a command point and a Miracle Dice, or 1. And at the end of the command phase I also finish the objective. So I've taken away the structure to make things easier to see, but in my command phase I'm going to spend the 6 Miracle Dice to use the Canoness's miraculous ability, Word of the Emperor, so now enemy units within 6 of her cannot make invulnerable saves from melee attacks. So where she is now, she is within 6 of the Destroyer Lord, and then the Repentia Superior used Driven on the Repentia, and they advanced. The Battle Sisters fell back from the Scarabs, and then leaving just a big gap for the Repentia to advance through, and the Superior following behind, so she gets the +1 to wound aura on them as well. Then the Seraphim moved over, getting an inch away from the Scarabs. Possibly if we manage to shoot them all to death, I can do the action this turn as well. Actually, also the Canoness uses a command rod on herself. I'm going to start the shooting phase with the Seraphim. I will supercharge the Plasma Pistol, but they're going to shoot the Scarabs. Starting with the Bolt Pistols, because there's a Scarab based on 1 wound. 8 shots on 3 on 1s. Roll the 2 1s, getting 7 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 4.
6s to save. Nope, that destroys the wounded base, and another one is down to 1 wound.
There we've got the Plasma, which missed.
Reanimation for the destroyed base? Nope.
So we're not going to be able to wipe them out, but the Canoness will throw a crack grenade at the... Well, I should just use her pistol, it's basically the same. She hits with her pistol, not supercharging. I wounded. That's going to kill the other base.
Which might also come back. No.
In the charge phase, the Repentia will charge the Overlord, and the Seraphim will charge the Scarabs. I'm not going to bother rolling, because they just need to go directly ahead.
But I will overwatch with the Destroyer Lord. 2d3 shots, 3, hitting on 6s, rerolling 1s. Nope.
So the Seraphim get in like that, Repentia get in like that. I'll do the Repentia first. So we've got 8 attacks from the Repentia, hitting on 4s, because they've got -1 to hit, rerolling everything because of Zealot. And 6s do an extra hit as well, because of the Passion. 3 hits so far. So that's only 6 hits in total, wounding on 3s, because they're strength 6, but they get +1 to wound from the Repentia Superior. 5 wounds at AP -3, yeah.
Yeah, so he can't take his invulnerable saves because of that miraculous ability, so we're looking for 6s. Nope, there's 10 damage, so he is dead.
Repentia will consolidate, bring in the warriors, I think. And I've just got the Seraphim to do. I've got 3 attacks with the Power Sword and then 8 attacks with regular Seraphim. Hitting on 3s, you're on 1s. And 6s do an extra hit. So 9 regular hits and 2 hits with the Power Sword. Black dice wound on a 3, while the other dice wound on 4s. 5 regular wounds, and then 2 wounds with no save.
6s against the regulars.
No, that will kill the Scarabs.
Well, I get to fight back with both the Plasma Sight and the Warriors, or just pile both of them at the same time, because it's not going to make any real difference, and then they'll all attack the Repentia. Plasma Sight has 1 attack hitting on a 4, it would have piled in an attack first. It missed, and then we've got 5 attacks from Warriors, which hit on 3s. And wound on 3s. 2 wounds.
2 6+ invulnerables. No. 5+ to ignore damage. 2 dead Repentia.
And then in the morale phase, the Plasma Sight disappears because there are no destroyers within 6 inches.
And that is the end of Imperial turn 3.
But at this point I will concede, because there's no way those Necron warriors can fall back and get within 3 inches of Objective 1, and the Canonist is actually in range to move to Objective 2 as well, so I can't stop the action being done, and I also won't be able to kill the character before the next command phase. Even if they did start the action, the Deathmarks are too far out of position and the warriors are all tied up in melee, so that's nothing I can do.
So that'll be an Imperial victory. We kept that game for you now. So that was the game for issue 64 of Warhammer 40,000 Imperium magazine. How did you think that went?
Well, obviously it looks like it was an uphill struggle for me, but I think a lot of that was actually down to the fact you went first.
Yeah, it was a pretty big advantage.
Possibly, if I'd gone first, the same thing might have happened. You would have just charged out anyway, and if we were in the same situation, I still don't think I would have been able to stop you doing the action, even though you would have needed to do it twice more. But the fact you did go first meant that my strategy had to be move as fast as possible towards your objective zone at all times, which was a problem when you were putting Archoflagellants and Penitent engines in the way, and you were also able to focus down the destroyers immediately, which, well, you were always going to do a lot of damage to something when the Seraphim turned up and the Archoflagellants could charge. Perhaps I would have been slightly better to try and screen with the Scarabs and the Warriors and let the destroyers do some more damage. The Destroyer Lord not being able to charge around things would actually be a problem, because if he'd been able to get into the battle sisters, he probably would have murdered them all. 3 of my command points in that game were used to reroll something into exactly the same roll, so that was unlucky, but I think more importantly was just the way you played, just sacrificing basically everything in order to prevent me getting to your characters, which is the right way to play it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to show off all my powerful melee units, and they didn't last very long, but it didn't matter so much. They killed what I needed them to kill, and I got to show off the blessing as well.
If you had not been able to do that and the Destroyer Lord had been alive, he probably would have killed all the Repentia, and then he would have been free to charge into your objective zone again, which might have been a different game. So
if it was you had to do each objective, it would have been a lot different. Like, that would probably be far too hard for the Imperium, actually. Or I guess you'd have to make it so that multiple characters could do the action per turn. I was just able to hold you up for too long, and it was easy enough for the Canonist to just move to Objective 2 if you really needed to at that point. And I also think this board is particularly bad for the Deathmarks. You can't really show them off. The sight lines just aren't very good. You took them because they're new, but you may have actually been better off with just even the flayed ones.
Yeah, they did well with their one round of shooting they did get to do, but they never got to shoot at anything particularly juicy. I considered deploying them with Dimensional Translocation. I didn't, mainly because on the turn they deployed their counters moving, but actually in hindsight they moved on that turn anyway before they shot.
So they still hit on 3s. I mean, one reason to not do that is they don't get to shoot on turn 1.
I was also concerned that they would be forced back to the corners of the board, but as it was in this game, they couldn't shoot on turn 1 anyway because they couldn't see anything.
They're a good utility unit for Necrons. I guess they are useful for picking off support characters, so things like the Repentia Superior, maybe the Phobos Librarian, or I expect the Phobos Librarian will be in cover most of the time. Yeah. Anything without a decent invulnerable save.
In a game where they can deploy in a good sightline in turn 1 and start shooting immediately, 5 shots hitting on 2s that can do mortal wounds is enough to scare anything. If they move, they're worse at shooting, so I will probably deploy them on the board turn 1 most of the time.
Get them somewhere high so they can make use of their long range, and there's a good chance you'll get some mortal wounds.
And they're a core unit as well, so they can benefit from My Will Be Done, and I suppose the Technomancer can bring them back as well. Unfortunately, one of the main things they can do is they have a stratagem in the full rules where if your opponent deploys a unit from reinforcements, like the Seraphim for example, you can immediately pay a command point to deploy the Deathmarks nearby and immediately shoot at that unit that's arrived. That is another use of them that we won't get to see with this magazine, at least as far as we know. We don't get that stratagem. Maybe we will when we get the Hexmark Destroyer with issue 85, we might get that stratagem because you can use it as well, but it's a long way off. So I will mostly just be using them as a static sniping unit. I like the models as well. They are obviously the same kit as the Immortals, but using different parts gives them a different silhouette with the different gun. And
they at least stand out compared to the faceless skeletal hordes the other Necrons seem to go for.
Adds another unit to the Necron collection as well that I'll get to use.
Yeah, it will break up the monopoly of Warriors and Immortals at the very least. And we did get some new rules as well. I mean, the Necron one, the Overlord having to be in charge is just an army building rule. I think a noble has to be your warlord to be able to have command protocols, and he's the only noble we have of the collection, so he's just going to naturally be the warlord. And the other 2 rules, obviously, we've seen before. And the Space Marine rules, concealed positions, probably the most useful out of those. We'll talk about that more in an upcoming issue.
Yeah, we'll be getting some units that actually get to use them, so...
But I don't think there's more to say about this game or this issue, so as always, if you like this content, do leave a like and subscribe. Leave any comments if you've been getting the magazine, playing along. We'd like to hear how you're getting on. Hopefully, should be bringing you some Stormbringer content soon. We'll see how it goes. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.